And I figured if I tattoo my hands, no one will hire me and I'll have to do my own thing.
Welcome to Self-Made and Sober. I'm your host, Andrew Lassis with selfmade-coaching.com. And in this podcast, it's my job to interview people who are not only crushing it in business, but have also struggled with addiction in the past and are in long-term recovery. Be sure to join our Facebook group where we help entrepreneurs grow and scale their business at facebook.com/groups/SMC Mastermind, like Self-Made Coaching Mastermind. I hope you enjoy the show, and be sure to subscribe and rate the show afterwards so you can get notified each Friday when we put out a new episode.
With me today is the sober bro, Roman Braley. He is an entrepreneur, business owner, hip-hop artist, podcaster, author, public speaker, star of a documentary, and the current program director at The Haven at Pismo. Is that how it's pronounced, Pismo?
Yes, sir.
Alrighty. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you nailed it, man. It's a lot. But, yes, above all else, I am a sober man in recovery and father of two. So, aside from that, man, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, 100%. So you got sober in 2012, and you've just been crushing it for the last 7-some years?
Yeah, man. Sobriety has been the single greatest thing to ever happen to me, bar nothing else, right? And, I've been trying to get sober since, 2004. And I went to my first 12-step meeting when I was 15 to support a really good friend of mine. Right? He said that he had been going to meetings and he was looking for some support. And so I went with him. And the whole time I was at this meeting, people were speaking and talking, and I was like, wow, I'm just so proud of my friend for doing this. And at the end of the meeting, a bunch of people came up to me, and they knew my name. And they were like, we're so glad that you're here. We're happy that you're here. Here's some information about more meetings and the literature and this and that. And somebody came up and said, I'd like to be your sponsor. And I was like, wait a second. Wait, what? No, I'm here to support my friend. But apparently my friend had been going there for a couple weeks trying to seek out a way to help me, right? So it was all this big ploy to get me in the rooms. And,
so how bad was your addiction in order for him to try to pull that off? What was going on in your life?
Well, this was very, very early in my addiction phase. I was at this time I was just drinking, but the drinking was to the point where it was out of control every time. There was no fun anymore. There was no excitement. I was starting to dabble in harder drugs. At this time, I was getting kicked out of high school as well. And it was just, things went rapidly downhill in a very short period of time in high school. And yeah, he caught me at the front end of that. It took many years, a lot more consequences, losing a lot of things, and a lot more pain and suffering before I finally stepped into, a 12-step meeting for myself.
And what were some of the consequences that you were facing from the time when you went to the first one to where you gave up?
Yeah. Well, for a long time, I had a really rough childhood, right? I grew up in the foster care system. I was a ward of the state. My father was a habitual prison vacationer, and my mother, she was a hardcore drug addict. And I was actually born in treatment center while my mom was in treatment. She was 15 when she had me. So I was born addicted to methamphetamine. It was in my system when I was born. And yeah, I spent the first couple of years living with her, and it was just terrible. You know, I suffered from, you know, physical abuse, sexual abuse, molestation, neglect, abandonment, verbal abuse. There would be times for weeks on end that my mom would just leave me alone at the house. So, so through all that, I really developed behavioral issues, right? We'll call them behavioral issues. And so while I was in school, I was just the worst kid. And my life changed when I was 12 years old. I was adopted by a loving family here in the Central Coast of California. And they absolutely changed my life. But for a long time, I held on to that pain, that hurt of my childhood, that trauma, and it manifested mainly in my addiction. And the only reason I say all that was because that was my excuse, right? That was my excuse to drink and do drugs the way that I wanted to do it, regardless of who got hurt in the process, regardless of even my own safety or well-being. You know, so I went from when I was adopted, I became a straight A student. I really turned my life around. I was doing good. I excelled in sports. I played hockey at a very high level. I was traveling all over the world playing hockey. And as soon as I drank alcohol for the first time, I was 12 years old when I had my first drink. And immediately I knew that this was the thing that was going to erase the pain, the misery, make me feel like I'm part of, and make me forget all of that trauma. And again, I used all that trauma and my pain as an excuse. So from the minute I started drinking, I was hooked. I wanted more, right? It's often said that alcoholism develops itself. It's a manifestation of three things, right? That's mind, body, spirit. Basically, that the mind, you have a mental obsession. The body, you have a physical allergy that manifests in cravings. And the spirit is spiritual malady, right? So the very first time I drank alcohol, my addiction, my alcoholism manifested in those three things. I had the mental obsession. Right off the bat, I wanted more. I needed more. The kids I was drinking with were like, oh, this stuff's gross. I can't do this. And I was like, more, right? I had a physical craving that was uncontrollable, right? Which led me from alcohol to marijuana to cocaine to methamphetamine to opiates to hallucinogens to seeking everything and anything I could get my hands on very, very quickly. So when my friend took me to the meeting for the first time at 14, 15, I wanted no part of it, because what they were talking about was they were talking about breaking up a relationship between me and my best friend, my lover, my safety net, my everything.
So basically the only good thing going on in your life that gets you out of yourself, that's the one thing that they're telling you, like, you've got to stop doing. The only good part of your life. Is that sort of how you interpreted it?
Yeah, and this was years before I really even thought that there might be a problem, right? So there's this thing called the stages of change. I don't know if you know this, right? The stages of change, basically, it's the cycle that everyone goes through when deciding whether or not they're going to change. And there's different stages. There's pre-contemplation, which is basically I'm not even thinking about it. There's contemplation, which is now I'm thinking about it. Then there's preparation, which means I'm preparing to change. Then there's action, which means I'm actually changing. So for a very long time, I was in the pre-contemplative stage. I didn't even think there was a problem. Nothing was wrong in my eyes. And in fact, alcohol was the only thing that was reliable. It always worked. It never failed. Whenever I needed it, it was there, right? So I get kicked out of high school. I'm a mess. I start getting in trouble with the law. I decide to try the homeless thing out. I jump trains. I travel all over Northern California, drinking and partying with crazy homeless people in riverbeds. And it all came to a screeching halt when I picked up a charge for assault on a police officer. And I was sitting there in juvenile hall. I was 17 years old, and I was facing either going to jail for a long time or joining the military. Now, me, despite my affliction with alcoholism and addiction, I am a survivalist, right? I want to live. I don't want to be locked up. So I take the deal. I join the United States Marine Corps, and I go off to boot camp, and I do that. Now, in the process of joining the Marine Corps, I don't know if you guys know this, but the Marine Corps is a fraternity that very, very much enjoys drinking, right? So my drinking just skyrocketed. And in that process, I it's still no consequences, but I started to feel the physical effects of alcoholism. I started to feel sick all the time, waking up with tremors. Oh man, I felt like my stomach hurt all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And
so what was like the final catalyst where you were just like, I can't keep doing this anymore, or was it just another consequence and just kind of this time it stuck? What's happening in 2012?
Yeah, so basically the short version is this: that I do my military thing. I get kicked out for drug use. I go from cocaine to methamphetamine to heroin. I get locked up. I go to prison for 2.5 years. My best friend overdoses and dies in my bathroom. I go back to prison. I get out of prison. I'm homeless in San Diego, on parole. I'm living on the streets. I'm living under this bridge. And I realized that the people in the meetings were right? I have this epiphany. They were onto something. So all I have to my name is a backpack with some clothes and my skateboard. And I skate to 7 or 8 meetings a day in downtown San Diego. I'm just skating all over San Diego, going to meetings, but unable to not drink in between them, right? So I'm drinking in between meetings. I'm not sharing at the meetings. I'm sitting in the back, but I'm crying. I'm begging. I'm pleading. I'm searching. I need help. I'm desperate. I'm willing to do anything. And I'm living under this bridge. And every single night, I pray up to God that there's an earthquake and the bridge falls and collapses on me, because I was just done with life. I couldn't find the solution. I didn't think it was possible, and I was resigned to the way of living. I was resigned to the fact that I was going to die an alcoholic death or end up going to prison for the rest of my life. And so I was praying that the bridge would fall on me so that it would do that. But I wanted people to feel sorry for me. So I wanted it to be like a tragedy, like they'd write in the newspaper, like, poor man gets killed by freak bridge accident, Like I wanted people to feel sorry for me. And so I'm going to this meeting in San Diego, and I this, for whatever reason, this old timer comes up to me and he says, "I've been seeing you coming around. What's your name?" And I'm like, "My name's Roman." He's like, "Well, I'm glad you're here." And for whatever reason, I just cry all over this man's shoulder. And I tell him, "Listen, man, I just want to die. I don't want to live anymore. I want to die." And I tell him the story about the bridge and how I pray. And in one sentence, he changed my life. This man looked me in the eyes. He said, "Roman, you don't want to die," which I thought was strange because I just told him I did. But he said, "You don't want to die. You want to stop living the life that you've been living, and you don't know that you have other options." And he took me by the hand and he said, "Roman, you have other options." And in that point, it was the first time in my entire life that I ever thought that there was another option for me. And in that moment, I told that man that I'm willing to go to any lengths to get what he has. I checked myself into treatment, and I've been doing it ever since.
Wow. And I bet you that there's been opportunities and times in your life where people had said something similar to that, but it's one of those, like, you were in that exact moment at that exact time, willing to hear that exact message, And what did early sobriety look like? Because, I mean, you'd been back and forth for a bit. Was it just like you surrendered and then it got better?
Yeah, basically, man, I surrendered to a process that I was pretty familiar with because I'd been going to meetings for so long. So I knew what people did. I knew what they said. I knew how they acted. So it wasn't very difficult for me in that sense. My problem, though, was all the other things, right? All the things, the outside issues, if you will, right? Years of trauma and abuse had manifested itself in some severe behavioral issues, right? And the meetings they weren't addressing those. And work with my sponsor just wasn't addressing those to the point that I needed them. So I needed to go to therapy. So I checked myself into therapy, and I met with a therapist twice a week to deal with those more intimate issues that I was struggling with. But really early in sobriety, I think a conversation that I had would lay the groundwork for the next 7 years and to be the person I am today. And it was while I was in treatment. I was still acting an asshole. I was still being a dick to people. I was still breaking the rules and just not pleasant to be with. And people would follow me. So I'd have like a group of other degenerates that would just follow me and be assholes and dicks too. And I was sat down by this counselor, and this counselor, he said, Roman, I don't know why in God's world that you have leadership quality. I don't know why people follow you everywhere you go and do whatever you do, but you have charisma and you have charm, and you have an opportunity and a responsibility. Whether you like it or not, you have a responsibility because you are a sober man, and therefore you are the image of what sobriety is. You are what people are going to associate with sobriety. And not only that, you're tearing people down with you when you could be building them up. You are a leader. And this man sat there for an hour telling me how I was a leader. And it wasn't the first time I had heard that in my life, but for whatever reason it resonated with me. So my attitude changed, right? Every single day I would read a page out of the basic text, all about acceptance. Acceptance is the answer to my problems, right? And I realized that my problems were of my own making, and that if I could just flip the switch and act as a leader rather than a rebel, my life would change, and it has. And since that day, I've strived in every aspect of life, in every area of life, to be a leader. And I've taken trainings, I've done seminars and workshops, and I've built businesses all about leadership. Leadership is one of the things that I'm really passionate about. Besides some sobriety, it's leadership.
And what are some of the resources that are like your go-to as far as leadership goes?
Well, there's a leadership training in San Diego called Ascension Leadership Academy, and that really was my first jump into actual leadership and transformation and learning emotional intelligence and motivational intelligence, and then starting to read some books. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a great book. I started to read The Power of Now. I started to really, study manifestation and the law of attraction. And I would go to workshops and I would listen to podcasts and I would just seek out more information. Someone told me one time, somebody who was much smarter than me, he's a scientist, right? He told me, listen, Roman, humans, our only job, the only thing that we have to do is grow. From the moment that the sperm hits the egg and conception happens, our only job is to grow, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And the moment that we stop growing is the moment we start dying. He says the reason you see some people are 80 years old and they're on fire for life, and other people are 30 years old and they're just miserable. And so it's been one of my biggest goals is to continue to grow. No matter how small or big, on a daily basis, grow a little bit more than I did yesterday.
That's such a really cool way to look at growth. And I'd never heard that before. Once we stop growing is when we start dying. And I've seen that a lot in my experience as well. And it's funny, too, that early recovery was where someone had given you or early recovery was the first time that someone said to you, you are a leader. And that was my experience as well. When I was in treatment, I had to write like a letter, like a goodbye letter to alcohol, something like that. And then, in small group, everyone like goes around. They're like, "Oh, I love how like there was passion in that message." And one of the ladies, she's like, "You're such a strong leader in the community." And I was like, "What are you talking about? Like, I'm the dude that I don't possess leadership qualities." And then she said that, and I was just like, "Oh, she's just another person that's wrong." But as I started growing in recovery too, it's a completely different world, and I'm a completely different person. I don't know about you, but I mean, the person who's here today is nothing like the person who had read that note back in 2013. So how did you get into entrepreneurship and working with those businesses? Did it fall into your lap? Was it something you were passionate about? What's the background on that?
I wish it had fallen into my lap.
I know, right?
to a certain extent, man, what I've learned to be 100% factual is that if you do the right thing happens, right? And it's such an easy concept, but it's something that so many people, they either don't know or they don't believe. The fact is that if you make the right choice, then another door will open. And if you walk through that door, another door will open. And that's how entrepreneurship has been for me, right? Again, going back to the basic text, it said, one of the things it says is, we must have a psychic change, right? Which basically is a complete change of your ideas, your beliefs, your morals, your values, the way that you think, and the way that you do, right? And there's a huge argument in the psychology field, which, by the way, I went to school for psychology. In early recovery, I went back to school, and I became an alcohol and drug counselor, and then I became an interventionist, which I'll get to in a second. But when I was in school, the argument was you have to think your way into new action, and the flip side was you have to act your way into new thinking, right? And I didn't know which one was right or which one was wrong, so I just did both. Right, so I just acted different and I thought different. And that worked out for you? It worked wonderfully, right? I went back to school. I got a job in treatment. One of my good friends, he had a connection at a residential treatment center in San Diego, and I started working there basically as a support staff while I was continuing to go to school to get my KDAC. And in that process, I just excelled, man. I found my niche. I found my passion, right? And I just want to say this, that for anyone listening that's maybe in early recovery or not in recovery at all or is thinking about it or struggling, what I've found to also be true is that when you take away something that worked for so long, like alcohol and drugs, like you have to find an equal or greater replacement, right? Otherwise, there's no chance at sustainable recovery. There's no chance at long-lasting recovery. And for me, what I know is that equal or greater substitute has been purpose, has been passion. I found my passion and my purpose very early in recovery, and that was helping others, right? And then, a few years later, I realized that I'm really good at business too, and that became another passion. And you know what? I'm looking for that next passion and purpose because I'm continually growing, right? But passion and purpose is what set me free. And I learned working as a support staff that I'm really good at it. I'm able to connect with people, but also I really love it, man. And so I met a guy who does interventions, and he was like, "Kid, you got something. I don't know what it is, but you got something." So he hired me to come on interventions with him. and basically go to the intervention, sit in the intervention, watch the whole process, learn the whole process. And then when whoever the intervention was being done on needed to go out and have a cigarette, I would go out and have a cigarette with them and talk to them one-on-one as a peer and be like, hey man, you can do this. You can, and it worked. It was highly successful. And then I became an interventionist working with him. And then, this is the dark side of recovery and really addiction treatment is I was working for another residential treatment center. And by this time I had become basically like part of the program, developer, director, if you will. And they started doing things. I saw them doing things now at a business level that I deemed to be very unethical, right? We were keeping clients that we couldn't treat. We were paying, we were charging families money for stuff that we couldn't do. We were buying clients. We were doing some things that were unethical, and it was against my morals. And so I brought this up with the ownership, and they were basically like, Roman, we appreciate your feedback, man, but this is our business, and it is a business, and we're going to keep doing what we do. You do what we tell you to do. And it was my first introduction to any shadiness in the addiction treatment. I'd never experienced that before. And I started researching it, and I learned a lot, and I learned that it's really common for these things to happen, which is really unfortunate. So I quit my job. I quit a really good job, and I walked away. And in that, I had been thinking about doing my own treatment center for a while, but I didn't think I had the skills or the knowledge or the know-how, or I just didn't think I could do it, And I quit my job, and I tattooed my hands. And part of the reason I tattooed my hands was because I really wanted to open my own treatment center, but I knew that I was never going to do that because I can always go work for somebody else. And I figured if I tattoo my hands, no one will hire me and I'll have to do my own thing. Right?
That's incredible. That's that burning the boats mentality, man.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it.
That's so awesome. That's the greatest burn the boats ever. No one's going to hire me if I do this. That's great, man. It
worked for me, man.
I love that.
It was not smart, but I knew that for me it was going to catapult me into something different. And within 2 months, I went completely broke. I couldn't pay my electric bill. My daughter was just born, and we couldn't pay rent, and we're eating top ramen soup every night. And for like 5 or 6 days, I said, you know what, screw it. I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this happen. I am making it happen. I am doing it. I'm setting the intention, and I'm doing the action. And I went out there, and I worked every single day for a week and a half. And I just reached out to people. I made connections, asked people things, this, that. And I got my first client as my own businessman. I got my own first client, which led to 2 clients, which led to 3 clients, which led to 10 clients, which led to me opening my first business, Sober Life Coach. And I opened that with one of my best friends. And we opened up that business. Now, at the same time, one of my mentors and my really good friends, he was opening a treatment center out on the East Coast, and he wanted to bring me on as the program director. So I was flying back and forth from the East Coast, working with him, building his treatment center, which was going to be a detox, residential, PHP, IOP, and I learned the whole process. I learned how he opened the center. I learned how he did his business plan, how he did his financing, what he did with insurance. I learned everything, right, while I was building up my own aftercare coaching program. And at the end of that, it was time for me to go move to DC to do that. And I said no. And this was my mentor and one of my best friends. I told him no. I said, if I do that, I'll never do my own thing. I'll never do my own thing. If I go work for you, and I love you and I believe in you, but if I go work for you, I'm selling out of myself, and I can't do that. So I stayed. I didn't go. He went out there. He's been successful. He built a dynamite program and it's his. And I love him, and I'm so proud of him, but it's his. I had to go do my own thing. And so Sober Life Coach blew up in San Diego. It was wildly successful, which led me to the next thing, which is to build my own treatment center. So me and my good friend, we started Sober Life Recovery Solutions, which is a treatment center down in San Diego. And we did that, and it was successful. It blew up. It was dynamite. It was everything that we had imagined come to reality. And I got hooked on entrepreneurism. So instead of settling for that, man, I went to the next thing. I started another program out in Brooklyn with a really good friend of mine, an aftercare coaching program out there, right? And then earlier this year, I went back to San Diego and I started Fearless Method, because I was moving away from addiction treatment. I'd been doing that for so long, and I was like, you know what? I have skills that might be useful for other people who aren't suffering from, addiction or alcoholism. So me and a good friend who's not in recovery, we started the Fearless Method, which is a 12-week online course in motivational intelligence. It's basically taking all the things that I'd learned in recovery and learned in leadership, all these academies and seminars and trainings I did, sprinkle it in with the principles that we find in 12-step programs and some of the lessons and teachings in those. And together we got together with a psychologist who was triple board certified, and he did all the science to back our program. And we built an online course where people, the everyday average Joe, can take this course and it would blow their mind. It would explode their mind. It would teach them, about fear. It would teach them about judgment and bias. It would teach them about motivation. And it was such an amazing experience. It was my first dive outside of treatment. It was really successful. It was a program that really worked too. And we're since now changing it and developing it to be a live training that we're going to start doing probably near the end of this year. But something happened, a couple months ago, and that was that my grandfather, he became very ill, so he moved back in with my parents up on the Central Coast. At the same time, my mother was getting sick, and I had basically not retired, but I had taken some time off to travel the world and really soak in the fruits of my labor. And we had all the businesses and all that. They were all self-supporting. They were running themselves. I had no participation. So I just packed up my bags and I moved back up to the Central Coast to be closer to my family. My grandfather, unfortunately, passed away last month, but I was able to spend some time with him, and he was able to meet my daughter, and we were able to have closure. And now I live up here, and my kids get to see their grandparents, and it's been great, being part of family, and it's come full circle, but I got the itch, man. I got the itch, and entrepreneurism I love deeply. So I started a new business. I came up here and I was like, all right, what am I good at? I'm good at starting treatment centers or coaching programs. So I filed all the paperwork and I started Slow Addiction, which is basically coaching, counseling, intervention services, all the above, right? So I started that program, and then I started reaching out to local resources because I hadn't been in this area for a long time. I wanted to know what was around. And in the process of that, I stumbled upon a program called The Haven at Pismo. And while I was interviewing them to find out who they were and what they do and this and that, I was able to meet with the clinical director, the executive director, and the owner. And I sat in a room with them for 2 hours. And after 2 hours, they said, would you come work for us? And, I was so against working for anyone else, because I tattooed my hands and I've been doing it myself, and I'm an entrepreneur. I'm super successful. I've opened tons of businesses. I never need to work for anyone else, but what I also know is that humility is one of the biggest principles of recovery. and that it's not always about me, and that recovery is not about me, and that the businesses aren't about me, and it's not about me, man. The world doesn't revolve around me. And although I'm very good at certain things and I've done a lot of great things, at the end of the day, man, it's not about me. And here was a program in my hometown that had all the bells and whistles, was exactly what I wanted to start here. They already had it, and they had a need for me. And they asked me, and I said, yeah. I said, yeah, man. I'll come work.
That's so crazy to be able to to put on the, because so many people, everybody can say I'm extremely humble. I'm the most humble person in the world. I am so humble. You will never meet anybody as humble as me. But to have scaled and grown businesses, and I mean, I see a lot of parallels in your story. Like several of the companies that I've built from the ground up, self-supporting, like I've spent weeks on vacation and still have money coming in, like they run themselves, thousands of customers, dozens of employees, like all these things, putting systems in place. What would you say is the number one or two most important things to be able to grow and scale organizations the way that you have?
Man, it's crazy, man. I went to a lot of business seminars and stuff because that's not my background. Business isn't my background. And for the first couple businesses, I sucked, right? I didn't know what I was doing. I was going to all these seminars, and I was hearing these really successful business people. And, I got to hang out with Tony Robbins and meet Grant Cardone and Gary Vaynerchuk and spend time and talk to these people. And it hit me, man, that what made me good at being a drug and alcohol counselor was my passion and my love and being able to have compassion. And I think that that's what makes me good at business, is that I'm passionate about it. That for me, man, of course, business is about making money, right? You don't start a business for any other reason to make money. Or do you? See, I had to question that, because that's what I was taught. Businesses make money. Well, sure, that makes sense, right? But why are we doing anything? If making money is my only goal, I'm doing something wrong, man. Because there's a greater purpose. There's a greater game at play, right? So for me, it's about making sure that my passion aligns with my business. And look, man, I'm probably going to start or be part of at least 30 more businesses before I am off this earth. I love it, man. I'm waiting for the next one. I'm like, what's the next one going to be? Right? I'm constantly looking at what's trending, what the future holds, where the future of addiction treatment is going, where the future of business is going. I'm constantly meeting people that have great business ideas, and I'm like, dude, let's do them all. Because what I've realized in doing them is it's possible. See, what I thought for a long time was impossible is actually possible. And not only is it possible, but I can do it. And if I can do it, anyone else can do it. So I'm deeply passionate about teaching others, helping others, training others. I've become a trainer. I do trainings and workshops and seminars myself now. And that's the thing I teach, man, is passion. If you don't have the passion, it's not going to work. Not only that, discipline. Now, one of my favorite lines out of the basic text is alcoholics are undisciplined. That's the whole sentence, right? And nothing could be more true. We as humans are undisciplined. It takes a lot of practice to discipline. If you have discipline and you have passion, you can do anything. You can do anything. And I plan on doing everything. There's many things I want to do, and I'm going to do them all. But above all else, I want other people to do those things too. Because I look around me and I see people I grew up with, and I see people in my community that are living, mediocre lives, that aren't passionate about anything, that they're dead. They stopped growing, man. They're dying now. And I see that not only in my community, but the world. And it makes me sad, man. It makes me really sad because I know that there's a solution. Not only for alcoholics and drug addicts, there's a solution for everyone, man. And in finding that solution, it could unlock happiness. And not only that, but you can create something out of it. And create something out of it that can help others, man. And I think for me, that's it.
Yeah, and I think anyone can hear that passion in your voice too. That's not just like regurgitating something that you've just told a million people and like, oh, here's the story again. Like, let me tell you, I am a passionate person. But you know, just that excitement behind everything that you're saying, man. Like, you can feel that and you can see that in just everything that you're doing. So I want to be conscious of your time. I know you're a very busy man. Where can people find you online, learn more?
Well, I mean, I just go to my Instagram, Sober Bro. That's where I post a lot. And I actually control that account. So for a while I didn't because my life was crazy hectic and I had 5 businesses all at the same time. So I didn't do any social media. But I had some complaints and I listened to people and I got humble and I said, you know what, you're right. Like if I'm putting stuff out there, I need to be authentic. I need to be real. I need to be genuine. So I actually control that account and I respond and I reply to everyone that messages me. So you can reach me there. You can reach me on Facebook. Facebook's good. You can see my music and my podcasts are all on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, everywhere there is. My album's called Bipolar. I'm working on my 2nd album. And, my documentary has been taken down. But if you'd like to have access to it, go ahead and message me on any platform, and I'll gladly send it to you. It was amazing. Vice Media came out, and they filmed the whole thing. It was a great experience, and it actually turned out to be an incredible documentary. So, listen, man, I strongly believe, although I'm in the business of helping people, and it is a business to me, I still believe in the idea that it should be for fun and for free. So I have no problem at any time ever having a conversation with anyone. I have private coaching packages. I have other things. I have my Fearless Method. I have other businesses, but just on a one-on-one basis. If you are struggling with addiction, alcoholism, or maybe you're sober, but you're spinning your wheels, you don't know what you want to do, you don't know where you want to go, man, reach out. Let's talk. That was me. I was there. If you have a loved one that is struggling with addiction or alcoholism and you're spinning your wheels and you don't know what to do, reach out, man. I can help. There's a solution to your problems, man. And if you're just the average person that's not struggling with those things, but you know that there's more to life than you've experienced and you want to talk about that, reach out, man. Let's talk about that. There's a solution to that too. And so reach out on those things. I'm here. I'm here for people, man. I love people. As you already said, I'm deeply passionate about this. This has been a great podcast, man. I appreciate you having me on and talking about this. And you got me lit up.
Thank you so much for listening to Self-Made and Sober. Be sure to join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/SMC Mastermind, like Self-Made Coaching Mastermind. I hope you enjoyed the show, and be sure to subscribe and rate the show so you can get notified each Friday when we put out a new episode.